Welcome, everyone. This is Joe Digger, the host of the Business 901 podcast. With me today is Jeb Blount. Jeb is a speaker, executive advisor, consultant, and world-class trainer who inspires people to take massive action and reach peak performance. Author of, I think, over 7 books, with his most current one, Fanatical Prospecting. He can be found at salesgravy.com, the most visited sales-specific website on the planet, he says. So I don't know about that, but I could go on, but it seems like you're somebody in the sales world. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me on today. It's fantastic to be here with you.
Well, your book, Fanatical Prospecting, it seemed to set off a glut of other prospecting books. Were you just lucky, or did everyone follow you?
I think everybody was following me. We knew when we were doing it that there was a hole in the marketplace, and that there'd been this shift about from people talking about actually doing outbound prospecting and talking to human beings to spending all their time on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook all day long. And we've been hearing from a lot of executives that were really upset that their sales team's performance had dipped and their pipelines were shrinking, and there was just all of this, movement towards social media, and it fizzled out. It hasn't worked. It's been not that social media is a bad thing. It's a great prospecting channel, but there were people telling salespeople, don't get on the telephone anymore, don't go knock on doors anymore, don't go have human conversations. Post stuff on LinkedIn and they will come. But the field of dreams of LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook just didn't work, and so I was actually getting a little bit pissed off at it, because I'm a sales guy and I have a sales team and I run my company, and I know the truth. So I wrote Fanatical Prospecting, and then from there, it's been the book's been so popular. I mean, it was #1 on Amazon. It's still #1 on Amazon. So it's been over a year that it's been a #1 bestseller in its category. The audiobook was #1 in sales and marketing since it came out. And the book did very, very well. So we're seeing a lot of people coming along. And the good news is that it's almost sparked a renaissance in sales prospecting that I think is important, because if you own a business, you run a business, your business will fail if you don't sell stuff. It's just a fact. And if your salespeople aren't prospecting and filling the pipeline up, then they're going to fail, and that's going to cause all kinds of problems for you and all the people that that work for you and your investors.
So you were driven to really to write it because of some of your leadership work in dealing with leaders that they're saying what's going on, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I would go give a speech, and I'd come back and I'd be standing in line. People stand in line to shake your hands, and there'd be CEOs there. What can I do to make my salespeople more productive? And I kept hearing this, and what I would hear is, my salespeople are hanging out on social media all day long. We're working with the military right now, and one of the big problems with the military is that their recruiters are hanging out on Facebook all day long instead of actually going out and meeting people. And at the same time, we have a perfect storm of an entire generation of people who are coming into the workforce whose entire experience with dealing with other people is on one of these things. So not only are we teaching the truth about sales and prospecting and what it takes to be successful, but we're also helping companies and our clients educate and teach a generation of new salespeople and leaders on what it really takes to be successful. And that's not different than we were doing this 30 years ago when I came into the workforce. Someone taught me how to sell and what to do. I just think the problem is, you go back to like 2007, 2008, 2009, when social media began to emerge. You just had a whole group of what I call pseudo experts, people who have no clue what they're talking about, who were telling and pandering to people, hey, you don't actually have to go talk to people. You can do this on LinkedIn. And people bought into that because, listen, salespeople and people in general would prefer not to talk to strangers, would prefer not to interrupt strangers. So it was sort of a Pied Piper call, and everybody followed it. But it resulted in major problems with pipelines, which is why, by the way, most companies, less than 50% of their sales team is making quota. I mean, so you've got, or more than 50% of the sales team is missing quota. So you've got a major problem out there, And Fanatical Prospecting answers some of those questions.
Well, yeah, I work a lot in the SaaS world, okay, and we're probably, the most guilty ones, okay, because we think we can sell all products digitally, right?
Yes.
And
well, you're exactly right. I mean, the SaaS world, you've got we have SaaS clients. We have a number of SaaS clients. We're going in and doing Fanatical Prospecting boot camps because their people are sitting on email all day long and sending emails out to the point where email is becoming a real problem because SaaS companies just they're invading people's inbox with a bunch of crap. And instead of actually having a strategy to go out and reach out to customers and bring them in.
Well, that's one of my problems, okay, that I have, and I think from, a lot of SaaS company has, is that you hear, used to be it takes 3 to 5 attempts to get someone on the phone. Now it's like 7 to 9 to 20 attempts to get someone on the phone. And is prospecting just a numbers game? I mean, Is that all it really is? Is consistency in numbers?
Prospecting, well, let's just talk about prospecting in itself. There's prospecting and sales, and people mix the two things up. All prospecting is asking for time. And by the way, it's the hardest ask in sales. And the 3 to 5 call and the 8 to 9 call, and pardon me if I say this, that's just total BS. I had a salesperson come to me and say, nobody answers the telephone anymore. I said, how many people answer the phone? Out of 100 dials, how many people do you get on the telephone? He said 25. I took him back because we've got stats going all the way back into the 90s, so early 90s, and we keep every stat. We've got data upon data. And I said, go and reach in my bookshelf. There's a book in there, and it's got prospecting data that I've handwritten in from those times. And I asked him to do the math. What were we getting in 1995? About 25% of the people that we called were answering the telephone. Now, the number of attempts changes depending on who you are. I have a client that's in capital equipment. 80% of the time, a contact picks up the phone. 80%. It's crazy. I've got clients who are in really big deal software, enterprise level software, $1 to $2 million accounts. Well, I mean, their numbers are 9%. So because they're calling into the C-suite. In business services, typically you're around 25%. We have data now that says it's pushing up into 30%. And the reason that's happening is because telephones are attached to people and nobody's calling. I'll give you this. Since last year, so we're now on about 18 months, I've received around 3,000 prospecting emails. I've received 4 prospecting calls, 4 phone calls. Think about this for a second. 4. 3 of them I'm doing business with. I got a cold call from a young man who works for a company called Tom James, a guy named Brett. Guy calls me up on my cell phone because this is my office phone. It's right here. He calls me up, a cold call. I engage with him. I'm driving to the airport. I have a conversation with him. I bought $7,000 worth of custom suits from him the next week because he cold called me on the phone. So this myth that people aren't answering the phone is complete and utter BS. And it's BS that your salespeople are telling you because they don't want to get on the telephone because it's easier to send emails. There's nothing wrong with an email prospecting strategy. But for example, we had one SaaS company that was buying lists, and then they were sending 8 emails on a campaign, and then they were calling. And they called us because it wasn't working. And one of the reasons it wasn't working because after you got 8 emails and then someone calls you up, you're mad because you got 8 emails. So we changed that. We said, if you're going to get the list, call the list first. Pull all the people off the list that are going to answer their phones. Turned out they got better results from calling the list first. And then the people that didn't answer, then we created an email campaign and an outreach campaign for that, including voicemails, by the way, that allowed us to create familiarity, move them into the familiarity bubble, and then increase the probability that they were going to engage. But but it doesn't make a difference whether you're sending email or you're doing a telephone or you're working in social or if you're a field sales representative and you're knocking on doors. I mean, it doesn't make a difference. To some extent, it is a statistical game. You can increase the probability that a person will engage you by increasing familiarity. That's advertising and marketing and prospecting to some extent. You can increase the probability that people will engage with you by calling them at the right time, right? Having the right message and making sure that you're calling the right person. So you can do things that do that. But nothing replaces the cumulative impact of daily prospecting balanced across multiple channels. And my message to the world, my soapbox is pick up the damn phone and call somebody. And take that and make that your number one thing that you do every day and then shift into an email block. I've got a couple of salespeople, for example, on my team who do voicemail blocks. They wait till after the golden hour, so around 6 or 7 o'clock when people aren't there, and they just dial and bang out voicemails. And what they find is they bang out voicemails, they pop in an email block the next morning, and then they make another call, and that increases the probability that people are going to answer the phone. But this whole concept, all these stats that people are throwing out, don't believe it. The people that are throwing these things out are charlatans, and it's BS. It just depends on your, on your industry vertical and your segment and who you're calling. And by the way, if it's an ex-customer or if it's someone who doesn't know you, the number of calls it's going to take to get there. Yes, there are some averages out there, but everything is product vertical, industry specific, and you should not get caught up in those things. There's no secret sauce to this. You have to have a balanced prospecting methodology that you employ every single day. You have to be super disciplined. And if you're a leader, you take no BS from your sales team. You say, get on the phone, send emails, do what you have to do, but you get in the door. That's what you have to do first. Then you can sell. Sorry for my soapbox.
Oh no, I can't. That's what I was getting ready to say. Is that I can't believe that you could go on some soapbox or anything, could you? Well, you believe in that, okay? You believe in prospecting, right? And I think the word that I see come up over and over again in your book and now is familiarity. Is that the key, building from that perspective?
Well, I mean, it's part of it, right? I mean, Coca-Cola advertises all the time because familiarity, right? We know Coca-Cola. If you're a small SaaS company, if you're a lean startup and you're working into, trying to grow, you don't have familiarity. Nobody knows who you are. So a lot of that's going to happen through prospecting. This is why you want to have a concerted and consistent prospecting effort. If I call and leave you a voicemail and I say my name, and people say, well, people don't listen to voicemails anymore. They do. And a lot of times they read voicemails. So if you have a great voicemail, there's a great voicemail strategy in Fanatical Prospecting, but they see the name. If you send an email, they see the name. But if you harass them via email, then you destroy your brand. So familiarity is, you think about it, everybody has a familiarity bubble. We have a bubble that we live in. And the things that are inside that bubble, we believe, things that we're familiar with, we believe are better, more trustworthy. And the things that are outside that bubble, we feel are less trustworthy. So part of the salesperson's job is to move into the familiarity bubble so that the person will be willing to engage. You also have to understand that there are buying windows. If you're a SaaS company and you sell something that's common, like things that people buy on a regular basis, then you have to figure out when they buy those things, because you can set up all the meetings you want to, all the demos you want to. If it's not, the window's not there and the budget's not there, it doesn't make a difference. You're going to waste your time. If you're selling something that people don't know that they need. I mean, and there are a lot of SaaS companies are creating these, really amazing products and software that nobody knew they needed before they got it. In that case, there's not a buying window, but you have to create that demand through your messaging. But that happens because you get an appointment, right? You have to spend some time with people. You have to walk them through a discovery call. Then maybe there's maybe in a lot of cases, a multifaceted demo track that you're going to put people on. But you have to get the time. And what we have to understand is the hardest ask in sales is for that time. So everything that you're doing is around, creating and improving the probability that you're going to engage the right prospect, the right person at the right time with the right message. We have to do those things. So when we think about familiarity bubble, we think about a complete system. Your marketing, your advertising, your prospecting, all of that put together. And prospecting can make that happen for you. But also it is, are you setting regular appointments? Are you getting up to bat? And yes, you have to make a lot of calls. I mean, look, my average salesperson, and on our advertising side of our business, so the salesgravy.com job board part of my business, my average salesperson makes 120 outbound calls a day on average. And my average salesperson sells 1 to 2 deals every single day. Now, most people would say, wow, that's a really low probability. I mean, you should do something else. That's what it takes. If I send 1,000 emails, I'll sell no deals that day. I've got to talk to people. But we do that 120 dials in 3 hours. 3 hours. That leaves us 7 hours for everything else. For our email blasts, for our social media marketing, for our lead generation, for selling, for customer service, for all of those things, for making sure that our customers are successful. And just like a SaaS company, we're on a subscription basis. So retaining our customer base is a big deal. If I make $120 and I sell one deal, and that, my average, customer sticks with me for 9 months on a subscription, that's a pretty good number for us. We know that happening, and every company has to have that. But I'll just go back to this. The reason we're having this conversation is not because what I'm saying is not true. It's because leaders don't have the courage to hold their people accountable for doing the prospecting. And salespeople are really, really good at making leaders believe that prospecting is no good. I even work with a SaaS company who had a group of SDRs, business development reps. They had outsourced the prospecting to another company, and those people were prospecting and giving the deal to the SDR who was calling in and then setting up an appointment for the AE. And you got to figure out, if I'm the investor in that company, if like I'm the venture capital company, I'm firing everybody. You're wasting my money. Why would you do something that way? And the reason it was happening is because the SDRs had convinced the CEO that prospecting was too hard. So the CEO found a bunch of people that were willing to do it for $10,000 a month. Stupid. More soapbox. I apologize, Joe.
Oh, no. I think it's a great soapbox, okay? How does leadership change? I mean, do they just put a mandate down, or do they change it with different ways with goals and forecast or even commissions? I mean, how do they change the structure to make it work?
I think you got all of the above. I mean, first of all, I would, and this is a pitch, but I highly encourage you. If you're a leader, go get Fanatical Prospecting and read it. It is the handbook for prospecting. It is the one book that I guarantee will make you and your company more money this year. I guarantee it, and I guarantee it so much. If you don't believe me after you read it, send me a note, and I'll give you your money back. So you got to read that first. You have to have the knowledge, right? You have to understand what's there. And then you have to teach people what to do. It's not fair to say to people, hey, go get on the telephone if you don't teach them how to do it. And you have to get your marketing department out of it. Your marketing department needs to be very, very careful about teaching your salespeople how to prospect. I mean, I met one small company who had given the prospecting training to an HR manager who had never called another human being in their life and believed that outbound prospecting was a bad thing. So what do you think? They're probably going to fail. So you have to teach them what to do. And there's lots of ways you can do that. We give Fanatical Prospecting boot camps. You mentioned Mary Lou. You mentioned Mark Hunter. I mean, there's more people out there besides me that understand this. Mike Weinberg's another person that you could go to. We work with a lot of SaaS companies, for example. We do these Fanatical Prospecting boot camps. We do facilitator-led remote learning. So we have a virtual classroom on Sales Gravy University, and we have a number of SaaS companies who will send like 3 or 4 of their reps in at a time. It's an 8-week course, and we got to coach with them and working with them. So you can do those things. Yes, you need to have data. Yes, you need to take a look at that. You also need to make sure you have time. You need to make sure that you're getting roadblocks out of your people's way. But number one for me, when I look at leaders, is the leader doesn't have the courage to stand on the floor with their BDRs or their SDRs and say, pick up the phone. It's 8 o'clock, we have power hour. From 8 to 9, there are no distractions. There's no Facebook. There's no cat videos. There's no whining. There's no complaining. If you want to work here, you pick up the phone. And they're sitting there and they're coaching it and they're timing it. How long does it take your SDR to make a call? I was with a group. It was taking 11 minutes per call. If you're taking 11 minutes per call, you got a problem. We went to one software company that was having a problem with their pipeline, and they were millions of dollars behind their forecast. And we went in. They had a group of SDRs. Their only job was to prospect all day long. That was their job by phone. That was it. They had AEs that had their only job was to have meetings and to move people through the pipeline. The AEs didn't have anything to do, and the SDRs were complaining that it was too hard to prospect. So I went in and looked at the numbers. Now, I just want you to pay attention to this. And again, if I'm an investor, I'm pissed off. So the average SDR at this company was making 12 outbound dials a day in 8 hours. How is that possible? So we sat down with them, taught them what we do in Fanatical Prospecting, taught them the phone block, taught them the 5-step process for prospecting to do it fast, because I'm about efficiency and effectiveness, right? You need to make as many outbound prospecting touches as possible in the shortest amount of time as possible with the greatest result possible. And we went from making 12 prospecting calls a day to 30 prospecting calls an hour. Think about that. And eventually we got them to 50 an hour so that we could take the SDRs, and that was their goal anyway, it was 50 a day, right? And they were making 12. We moved them to 50 an hour, which gave them another 7 hours to do social media, right? To work the pipeline, to do email, to send snail mail. I mean, to do everything else. But we got their prospecting calls out of the way first thing in the morning. The CEO looked at me and said, "How did you do that? It's like magic." And I said, I stood in a group of people and said, "Pick up the phone." And I stood there until they did. And I taught them how to do it fast, to get it done really, really fast. So it's efficiency and effectiveness. So for me, it's everything you said, Joe, all of the above. But more than anything, the leader has to have the courage to be Teflon. This is a core thing that we do. This is part of our culture. And you can do anything you want to in our culture. But if you're not willing to prospect, and by the way, in my world, everybody prospects. Our CFO prospects. We have power hours. We bring everybody in and everybody gets on the telephone. You got to have that as your company mission and knowledge. And the problem is, and you know this to be true, like a lot of people who start companies, they're engineers, they're really smart people, they come from different backgrounds, so they're not used to doing that. They're not used to doing sales, and the last thing that they would ever want to do is pick up the telephone. I mean, they don't want to do that either. So they accept the excuses. And I'm telling you, look me in the eyes. If you're the CEO of a software company, if you're a CEO of a SaaS company, if you're a CEO of a startup company, if you're a CEO of any company, go to your sales floor, get on the floor, and I don't care how you feel about it. It doesn't matter. Your team must prospect, and you hold everybody in that organization accountable for it. And I promise you that your numbers will go up.
Well, I think people forget that when you talk with companies, even leaders, I mean, leaders of this company like to talk to leaders of this company. They like to talk to the same people. So when you say everybody should prospect in a company, that's very true. And what a great way to learn is to call your counterpart in a company that you're trying to sell to or something like that. I can't imagine a company not appreciating something like that.
That's a really good point, Joe. I love that, and I love what you said. So can I wrap that up for a second? So what Joe said, Joe just actually taught you a great technique. So if you're a company and you're trying to move across, say move into an industry or what have you, you can simply align prospecting by roles inside your organization, and you can start sending the message that everybody in your organization is responsible for business development, no matter who you are. And as a CEO of my company, I'm on the road a lot. Last year I did almost 260 days on the road. So, but when I'm here in the office, when I walk through the door, the first thing I do is get a list, and I make 25 dials with my sales team, because I want them to see that this is important to me and it's important to them. And when I do that, what happens is we re-energize the place. But I could see, following your advice, Joe, I could see, the CEO saying, I'm gonna call 10 CEOs today. And you can see the vice president, you're going to call 10 vice presidents of sales a day. And especially in cloud services, that makes a lot of sense, because we're seeing that budget is being spread out among different department heads. That if you're in SaaS sales or cloud services sales, you have to be able to reach across lines of business and across departments, and understanding that in a lot of cases the CSO may have more budget authority than the CIO when making a SaaS purchase or a buying decision. And also understanding that you've got usually larger groups of people, especially with long-term software buys, where there's if you're selling multiple seats that are going to be making those decisions, and it probably makes sense that your CFO has a relationship with the CFO, and the CEO has a relationship with the CEO, and the CMO has a relationship with the CMO, and your account executives can help manage all of those things. But that allows you, and the ever-changing world of the cloud and SaaS sales, to really amplify your message and create that level of familiarity, especially in a competitive marketplace, as you have those different stakeholders inside that organization making those decisions.
Think of that, because you have a different conversation, the different levels of perspective, okay, for lack of a better way to say it. The other thing you bring up, and I think is so important, is consistency. You need to do it day in and day out and have it, your power hour, as you call it, or whatever. You need to be consistent in this process, right?
Every day, every day, every day. The one thing that you cannot discount is the impact of, the cumulative impact of prospecting. So if you're doing it a little bit every day it adds up. So if you're a CEO, let's just say you call 5 CEOs every single day. Well, day one, you're not going to probably get anything from that. Day two, maybe not. Day three, maybe not. Day four, maybe not. But in the week, you've called what, 20, 25 CEOs. 2 weeks, you've called 50. In a month, you've called 100. And even if they're voicemails, they heard something. And what happens is, if your entire team is doing that every day, the cumulative impact becomes exponential. And when we talk about familiarity, when we talk about setting appointments, what happens is, and this is really weird, a little bit kumbaya, right? But the universe begins seeing that. My team calls it the sales gods, right? The sales gods recognize that you're doing those things. And what you'll find is that these bluebirds start flying through your window. These opportunities start showing up. And it's one of the things that I know about prospecting, is why I'm fanatical about prospecting, is that I have this deep and enduring faith that I can prospect my way out of any problem. I mean, when I started Sales Gravy, it was just me. I didn't have a team. I didn't have an office. I didn't have anything. It was me on a computer in 2006 with a telephone. And it took me 2 solid years of prospecting before I sold my first enterprise client, and I mean a huge client. But right after that, one fell after another, after another, after another. But it was the cumulative impact of all of the work that I did over that time that created those opportunities. And once I hit that place, like my curve was going like this, all of a sudden it just went like this. And then I hired staff, I brought people in, we grew, and we continue to grow. We're getting bigger every day. It was cumulative impact, and so I think we take your advice, right? We add it up, we put it every day, and then you take your entire team and you get them working. There's power in that, and everybody will whine to you. Oh, I made 10 calls a day and only one person answered the telephone. Don't pay attention to it. Teflon. Do it again tomorrow. Do it again tomorrow. Do it again tomorrow. Do it again tomorrow.
Well, I think of the typical sales funnel. Okay, and you think you have like this A, B, C list maybe, or something of people you're calling. Should I work from A to C, and if I run out of time, skip the C's, or should I try to dabble a little bit in each? Because time is the big thing in sales, right?
Everything's around time. We deploy a framework called the prospecting pyramid. The prospecting pyramid basically says this: when you begin a prospecting block, let's just say that we're gonna call people. At the tip of my pyramid, at the very top of my pyramid, I should be talking to my highest quality, highest probability prospects. So, for example, if I've done some research, let's say maybe I went to a trade show or I went to a networking event and I grabbed some leads from that, and I talked to, say, 20 people. And in those conversations, there were a couple of conversations where I saw that there was a huge need in the organization, or there was a gap there, or the buying window was open. And I went back to my prospecting block. I would call those people first, because those are the people that are at the highest probability of me setting a discovery call with, or setting a demo with, or moving them through the buying process. As I go down that pyramid, I'm going to be probably talking to people that maybe I don't have a lot of information on, or maybe I don't know who the stakeholders are, how they make decisions there, or what their particular situation may be. And if you bought a list, you go down there, you've got this huge prospect base of businesses that you don't know anything about. And some SaaS companies, I mean, if you look at their prospect base, because their product is so universal and so ubiquitous in terms of helping businesses, I mean, they can have a prospect base of 10 million people. And we run into this a lot when we're working with, SaaS companies. You've got 10 million, businesses that you can do business with. Let's take a look at the ones that are at the highest probability, right, of engaging and moving into the pipeline. Focus on those first. And so you should start there. Now, should you reach out to the other 10 million businesses? Yes, but that's a different type of prospecting. So one type of prospecting is prospecting with the intention of setting an appointment. If you get inbound leads with people who are interested in working with you and they know about your product, you may have a prospecting block that is focused simply on closing the deal inside of those accounts. So in my case, in my business, we have, we get an inbound lead. We're not calling to set a demo. We're calling to close, because this is a person who has gone through the process already on their own and is calling us. You may have a prospecting block that is purely informational. All you're doing is gathering information. You're calling in to find out who does this or who is that. You may have some of that information. You may not have some of that information. You may know the name of a business, but you may not have information on who the actual person is there who would be the spearhead for your particular product. And so as you look at your world, you say, I'm going to start with my highest probability first, and I'm going to move to my lowest probability in that order, but I'm not going to discount the impact of calling just to gather information, or sending emails, or social media, or going to networking events, or getting referrals. I mean, all of that balanced across all the channels that you have available for you. But when you deploy it that way, it works out much better for you. And there's one other reason for that. Let's just say I start my day with the highest impact activity that I can do. Most salespeople start their day with email, very low impact. Great salespeople start their day prospecting, very high impact. And then great salespeople, ultra high performing salespeople, they start their day by the tip of the pyramid by calling the prospect that has the highest probability of moving into the pipe. Where they're calling at the beginning of the day, when they feel most confident, when they feel the best, when they feel good, when they've got the highest energy. So the probability that they're going to move that person into the pipe goes up exponentially. And as you said, right, we only have a little bit of time. That time is very valuable. And we want to use that time in the most effective way that we can. And that means focusing on our highest probability activities.
We started out first thing in the morning, and by 10, I can probably go home, right?
Well, I mean, if you think about that, if I started you at 8 o'clock, by 10 o'clock, if you worked in my world, on my system, and you were an SDR, by 10 o'clock in the afternoon, you pretty much done all of your telephone prospecting for the day. Now, that depends, by the way. If you're working all the way across all the time zones, then I would move you from time zone to time zone. What I find is most of my clients have their sales reps split up in some way, so that you've got an East Coast group and you've got a West Coast group and you've got middle of the country group. And if you have that happening, then you stagger your people's start time during the day, so that they're coming in and they're starting their day on prospecting. I do find, by the way, just from a staffing standpoint, that companies make a real mistake by having a West Coast person coming in at 8 o'clock in the morning. Because what happens is they end up burning a lot of their day doing nonsense stuff until they can start calling around 11 o'clock in the morning, and they don't get nearly as much done. They're usually the least productive people on a sales team. So if you're going to have a West Coast calling team, like people who just their territory, say California, start them at 11 o'clock in the morning, and you have to figure that out inside your own business. But no, I mean, at 10 o'clock, look, there's other things to do. If you've gotten someone to move into the pipeline, you probably need to do some research. You need to do your planning for your call. You need to plan for your demos. If you are a combined person, you sell, or you prospect, you do discovery calls, you do demos. All your demos should be set in the afternoon. You should not set demos. You should not set discovery calls in the middle of your phone block, because if you do, you won't do your phone block, because everything's easier than doing that. So the afternoon should be spent on phone blocks, on discovery calls, on demos, on follow-up calls. If you're moving people through a pilot program, you should have all that scheduled out. So, for example, if I'm in a pilot, I have a call at the beginning of the pilot. I have 2 or 3 calls in the middle of the pilot. I have a call before the pilot ends. I have a closing call. All that's set in advance. So all that should be on my calendar. Plus, you've got your email prospecting block. So if I do, for example, we do a prospecting block in the morning, anybody that we don't talk to, so if we pull the list we don't talk to, we take time in the middle of the afternoon to take that group of people. We use a program called Tellwise, a really fantastic program. And Conrad and his team over there, getting another SaaS program, have done a beautiful job with that product. So we use that product. We use another company called Kite Desk. So we've got those two things going on. We also use Discover.org, so we've got leads from them. And so we've got all that's part of our sales stack. So in the afternoon, we take all the people that we call in the morning, we set up an email block so that the email goes back out at 8 o'clock in the morning. While we're making our dials, and this is a beautiful thing about Tellwise, while we're making our dials, our emails are going out. We're able to see when people are looking at the email. So the people that open up the email and they come on, they click on a link on, if there's, let's say that we've got a document or what have you, then we can reach out to them through proactive chat, and we can call them after they open the email up pretty quickly after that, because we know they're at their desk. So we roll our prospecting block first thing in the morning. Our emails are going out at the same time. Then we roll into a prospecting block right after we send those emails that is both a combination of proactive chat to get the person to move onto the telephone with us. And what I mean by proactive chat, a person's looking at a page and we reach out to them and engage them with a provocative question or something to get them to come on. And at the same time, we're calling all the people that opened up those emails. So every day we have a system that works. And by the way, it's like Groundhog Day. It's consistent. We do the exact same thing every single day, where moving people into the pipeline, discovery calls, demos, presentations, closing conversations, working across all the stakeholder group. Well, that's the art of selling, and that's the heart of selling. And the fun part of selling, prospecting, is the systematic, robotic part of selling. And our system does not change from day to day. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't take some time to look at our data and, hey, if we're not getting a result, to go back and look at root cause. And a lot of times the root cause is self-inflicted, right? We shoot ourselves in the head by doing something dumb. But sometimes root cause is a message isn't working, or maybe a channel isn't working, or sometimes the software that we've purchased to help us prospect isn't working. But we're able to look at all of those things, and our friends at Kite Desk and Tellwise and Discover.org, we really love those products, and we use several others for we use HubSpot as well, and for inbound marketing, and we have Salesforce as our CRM, and we have a pretty decent stack of technology. But sometimes we recognize that we've got a problem there, and we need to make an adjustment in how we're doing things. But we're systematic, we're robotic, we do the same thing every day. And I can tell you that most of the time when it's not working, it's because we've taken our eye off the ball, we've taken our foot off the accelerator, and our salespeople have done what salespeople do. When it comes to sales activity, they've slowed it down a little bit. The numbers start dipping a little bit. And when that happens, our sales start dipping. And it's better to catch that ahead of time through leading indicators than to wait until after you've hit rock bottom. But that's what we do.
But if we raise that bar, okay, and these different things with, let's say our digital and our social media things of contact with people, aren't the buyers getting somewhat resilient to all that? I mean, don't they start kind of building up barriers and, I know that if I sign up for this email or sign up for this download, I'm going to get a phone call in 20 minutes. That sales gravy calling me with an Atlanta number, okay, because I just downloaded this ebook. And are buyers getting attuned to that type of stuff? I mean, how do we keep it fresh?
Well, I think that you're talking about inbound marketing, and we're talking about a little bit different. So we're talking about outbound. So when we send an email out, we've made a phone call, we've left a voicemail for them. They didn't answer the phone. We have an email that goes right after that, and there may be a link to something. They don't have to give us their information. We already have their information. So it's not like if we send a link to something. We say, for example, here's a link to our winter training catalog. So we have a new catalog that came out with all of our courses that we're running live. And we send that out. They click on it, they can look at it. What Tellwise does, for example, is it creates a web page out of that download. So we know that they're in there looking at it. We know that we can actually open up a chat box with them, and we can ask them a question about, hey, we see them looking at Fanatical Prospecting. We can ask them a question, what are you doing to drive activity to your sales team? If they write back, we just say, hey, it sounds like it makes sense for us to get on the telephone. If we go back to inbound marketing, what you're talking about, which is, hey, setting up a form where someone downloads a page or goes to a webinar, are they smart that they're going to get a call? Yeah, I think we've trained people that if you download something for free, that you're paying for that with your email address, or you're paying for that with your phone number. But here's what I would say to you. Maybe that's a good thing, because instead of a bunch of people downloading stuff that don't want to engage with you anyway, usually those people are what we call seekers. They're people who are seeking information. They have no buying authority. They have no influence on the buying authority. All they're doing is getting information. You get hung up in those things as people, as a salesperson, you're going to lose. And oh, by the way, the highest value prospects in your pipeline or in your industry or in your marketplace. Those people were never downloading your crap. Never. They didn't have to. There's a line of salespeople waiting outside their office trying to get in. So most of the people who were downloading your stuff anyway were not high-value prospects. Sometimes they are. I know that if I download something, people are going to call me. I know that. I get that. Fortunately, most people don't even call. I know I'm going to get an email, right? They're going to get an email. That's cool. I also know there's an unsubscribe on the email, so if it's crap, I can get rid of it. But usually, I'm selective. If I download something, I know that it's going to cause a salesperson to call me. I get that. I'm smart enough to understand that. So I typically download stuff that I'm okay with the call because it's something I'm interested in. So in some extent, because people are gotten smarter about those things, we're getting better quality inbound leads. And for us, an inbound lead it's our very best lead. We have a much higher conversion rate on an inbound lead than we have on an outbound call. There's no doubt about that. And if you're an organization, my recommendation is you combine your inbound with your outbound, and you've got real power, right? You should have inbound coming in. However, and this is important, I see reps every single day in companies that we work with where there's a pile of inbound leads, and they're avoiding calling those leads too. I know this for a fact because I download stuff every day from SaaS companies, and nobody calls me. My phone number's on the freaking internet. Nobody calls me. I'm a CEO. We spend a lot of money every year buying products. Nobody calls. But I'll get 15 emails from the same schmuck who sends me a note and says, "Did you get my email yesterday?" Guess what? I did. I just didn't respond to you because I don't respond to emails. So I do think that. But I also think that this concept, are buyers getting smarter? Not really. Here's what's happening. Buyers have more information at their fingertips. They can go and do research. They can look for things. They can test things out. But there's also data that says that buyers are getting tired of that. Buyers are getting tired of having the burden of collecting all the information. I'm getting tired of SaaS companies sending me emails, and I have no freaking idea what they're talking about. I have no idea what they're talking about. They send me these emails with all this jargon and big words in it. I have no idea. Sometimes I send it back to the rep and go, "Could you put this in plain English?" And they still can't, right? So I get that too. But I think that that buyers want salespeople to bring value when they have a conversation with them, and I don't think that is new to 2016. I was selling in 1980. I was selling, or the 1980s. I was selling in the 1990s, where I was really building my sales career. And in the 1990s, buyers wanted me to spend time with them and add value. We're under this delusion like that things change so much, and the reality is there's not an old school or a new school. There is the school of selling, and that means you have to build relationships with people. You have to add value. You have to ask questions. You have to listen to them. You have to be able to understand all of the people in your stakeholder group that are influencing the deal. You have to understand their level of influence. You have to understand that there are some people who are going to be advocates for you. There are some people who are going to be naysayers, and there's some people who are going to be agnostic. And you have to be able to influence those. You have to build coaches so that if there's multiple people making a decision, you need someone on your side. You have to make sure that you don't get stuck. And with seekers, people who are downloading information, you call them up and they're the secretary, like for the boss, and they downloaded a white paper and now you're stuck there. You have to make sure that you understand the people in the organization who are amplifying pain or issues. You have to do all of those things. That's not changed. It's easier, by the way, to sell than it's ever been before because, dude, when I was, 1992, when I was out there carrying a briefcase, my database was a phone book. I mean, that was it. You didn't know anything about anybody. You had no information. And so you had to go in there and you had to do all the work you had to do up front just to get through the door. Now, when I go to LinkedIn, I can find anything about you, anything about your company. And oh, by the way, the company can do the same thing for me. So I think that we have to be careful not to get caught up in, hey, everything's changed merry-go-round that we get into. Because what happens if you're an executive is that you get into this BS vortex of everything has changed, and so you start chasing flavor of the day. You start looking at the next everything has changed, book that comes out or idea that comes out, and you start jerking things around. You don't get anywhere. What I know is this: sales is blocking, tackling is no different than football, right? Throwing a pass, running the ball. You do the basics every single day, and you do it consistently. And you said this, right? Every day you do it, you're going to win. And I think unique to startups and unique to software, unique to cloud, unique to that space is that a lot of that space you've got these ideas and these new ways of doing things that people don't know anything about. So you have the additional burden of, to some extent, teaching people that they need something. And there's a book, by the way, and someone you should probably get on your show that I'd recommend. And it's Trish Batuzzi wrote a book around sales development. And I have it around here someplace. I think it's called the Sales Development Handbook. And I may have that wrong. You might want to look that up. But she takes what we do in Fanatical Prospecting. And she applies that to how do you build a sales team that can actualize that and make that work, in that particular paradigm.
I think that's interesting. But, the bottom line is, and I think Dan Pink said it as well as anyone, to sell is still human, right? I mean,
Well, that's true. To sell is human, but also to buy is human. And I think we miss that, right?
yes, yes. Good point.
People and what we understand about buyers are completely irrational. And where salespeople make a mistake is that salespeople believe that buyers are rational, that buyers are making logical decisions based on their own self-interest. And that is simply not true. And neither are influencers, because our brains aren't built that way. Our brains are stock full of cognitive biases, of heuristics that we use to make quick decisions, and in a complex world. And we see all the time. In fact, I had one of my clients. This is in my brand new book, Sales EQ. I wrote the story, but one of my clients sold a $500,000 software deal. And when we went back and asked the buyers why they bought because they liked the salesperson so much, that he was a really nice guy, and that he was the only salesperson that sent the buyer a birthday card. You can't make this stuff up, right? A $500,000, and this wasn't one of those decisions where, hey, it was $500,000 and it's over next year. They were basically getting married to this company for life, because this software was so integral to their world that once it was in place, moving away from it was almost impossible, because he sent her a birthday card. I mean, think about that. So buyers are irrational, and buying is human. And I don't have the graph I could put up, but think about it like this. Most sellers, right, begin sales conversations talking about logical things. They talk about features and benefits and the things that a product does for the business. They ask logical questions. Most buyers begin the selling process at the emotional level. Do I like this person? Does this person listen to me? Do they make me feel important? Do they care about me? Do they understand me? Do I trust them? And so the seller starts at logic, the buyer starts at emotion. And as the sales process, moves, the buyer moves more to logic. The buyer feels like, hey, I like the salesperson or what have you. So the buyer moves to making a buying decision. And so then they begin weighing all the data. They're like, am I going to spend money here? So they move more towards, logic. The seller, who's afraid they're going to lose the deal, right? So they've got to negotiate. They've got to ask for the business. They've got a lot of their time and their emotion invested in it. They're at the emotional state. So the buyer is at a logical state. The seller is at an emotional state. And if you think about that in most of your deals, the buyer and the seller are perpetually out of sync emotionally. So you've got all of this conflict. And we think, everything has changed in selling. That was happening when the Egyptians were building pyramids. This is humans, right? This is how we work. And Daniel Pink is exactly right? Selling is human, buying is human, and human beings have not evolved, over the last 20 years to become different than they were 20 years ago. They just haven't.
Well, I got it all figured out. I'm just going to cold call people on their birthday, right?
That's exactly right. Well, I'll tell you what works for me, and it works with email too. If someone wants to get in touch with me and you go and you send me a note and say, Jeb, I read your book and it was awesome. And it's sincere, right? So a couple of people have heard me say this and they send me insincere things, and I know it's insincere. But if it's sincere, and I'm gonna respond to you. Why? Emotional. You said something nice to me. One of the guys that I do business with cold called me one day. I was on my treadmill working out. He called me up. And he said, oh, I didn't know you were going to answer the telephone. I said, well, I did. What's up? And he goes, I read Fanatical Prospecting and I loved it so much. And you said to call people, so I'm calling you. I ended up buying from the guy. Like, how can I say no to that?
Yeah,
So
sure. Well, I'll have to tell you that the first time through Fanatical Prospecting, I read it and I thought, okay. But then all at once it became my go-to book, okay? And I don't know how it grew into that, all right? Because it just kind of evolved. And so it wasn't like I read it and said, oh, this is fantastic. This is the book I need. It just kind of said, oh, yeah, I thought there was something like that in there, okay? And I went back and it just sort of evolved into the one that I used, okay, and looked at.
I'm clapping for you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I love that.
Well, tell me when your new book comes out, and also about your website and the courses you offer and how someone can learn more here, okay?
Absolutely. Let's start with a new book. I've got a new book coming out. It'll be out on March 24th. It's called Sales EQ. It really focuses on the psychology of selling. We call it the new psychology of selling. And it's around exactly what we talked about. It's leveraging sales-specific emotional intelligence inside the pipeline to close basically any deal so that you can interact with people. And to sell is human, to buy is human. We talk a lot about that in cognitive biases, how people operate, but we really teach salespeople the psychology of how people make decisions and then how to leverage their own emotional intelligence to take advantage of that so that they can move more people to close and close more business. That book, by the way, is available right now for pre-order, and I would suggest pre-ordering it. When Fanatical Prospecting came out, we sold out. Everybody sold out of books really in the first couple of days, and all the people that had pre-ordered got their books immediately. So it's something that you can do right now. You can go to Amazon, Barnes and Noble. The book will be available in Barnes and Noble. Fanatical Prospecting, by the way, is available in every Barnes & Noble store across the United States. And you can also pick that up on Amazon and any online outlet. My website is salesgravy.com. And we have on our website this amazing platform that we spent a lot of money building called Sales Gravy University. And it's an online learning platform, and we offer both self-directed programs, so you can go on and say there's a program there called Telephone Essentials, so you can learn how to telephone prospect by watching videos of me. But we also offer an entire catalog of facilitator-led or instructor-led remote learning. And these are scheduled classes that have self-directed, sort of a blending learning environment where we have a virtual classroom, a very cool, innovative virtual classroom that you can spend time on. All of those sessions are recorded. Plus, you are able to engage in discussion forums with the other participants. You have chat rooms that are open once a week with the facilitator, and the facilitators are available via phone and email. So participants have some interaction with an expert in their field teaching this particular course. So we have a course coming up called Business Guidance Selling, in particular that is built for SaaS and cloud and technology salespeople. It's taught by a guy named Keith Lubner, who is an expert in that area, and he teaches, how do you work across stakeholder groups to consolidate budget inside of companies and work across, for example, CMOs, CSOs. So you go to salesgravy.com and you'll find Sales Gravy University there. Check it out. There's a couple of free courses that you can take. And we also have a really innovative mobile app for Sales Gravy University on both iOS, on Apple, and on Google Play. And you can download those apps as well. So we've got that going on. And of course, you can reach me. And by the way, please go buy Fanatical Prospecting. I guarantee it will make you more money this year. But you can reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter at SalesGravy. I love people to follow me on Twitter. You can reach me on Facebook. Follow me personally. I'm at Sales Gravy, or you can get Jeb on Demand. /Jeb on Demand is my page on Facebook. Follow me there. I'm on Instagram at Sales Gravy, and I'm on Snapchat at Sales Gravy too. Although I struggle with Snapchat, I have to be honest with you. but I am there. So if you hang out, if you follow me there, I'm at Sales Gravy. You can find me at Jeb Blount. If you go to if you can get my podcasts on iTunes, on Stitcher Radio, on Podbay FM. Obviously, I'm on YouTube as well. You can go to my YouTube channel and check out my videos. So that's all the ways that you can get in touch with me. But I do encourage you to go check out Sales Gravy University. There's a course right now called 15-Minute Sales Training, and maybe we can even put this video on there if we decide to. And you can download some different videos from experts. Some of the experts that you've interviewed as well, Joe, are there. And it's a great opportunity for your entire sales team to check out some free advice, some free training in different areas of sales.
Well, that sounds awesome, and I would encourage people to go look at salesgravy.com. Great website, great information there. There's as much free stuff on there as there is paid stuff on there. There's a nice mixture of both, and I think if you're in the sales game at all, you need to go visit it.
Thank you.
This podcast will be available in Business 901 iTunes Store and the Business 901 website, so I would like to thank you very much, Jeb, and thank all the listeners for listening.
Thank you.